The Chiefs need to find some talent on defense, and the fastest way to do that is in the NFL Draft. We're going to talk about the Chiefs at the Combine coming at you right now. Welcome back to RGR. I'm Ryan, and this is me going rogue, RGR football, and we have a ton to talk about with the Chiefs as well as the rest of the league heading over to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. I just want to go over the general concept of how this week goes and what it really means in exposure to teams and players coming together. A lot of stuff to go on. The first couple of days are just really about getting to know the players, both medically, doing some interviews. The Chiefs are going to be part of that process. And as they get kicked off, they start to learn about some of the intangible things about the kids they've seen on film. And all the film work's gone into this. The scouting department has been working for quite a long time. And that's kind of the Chiefs' process. GM Brett Veach talked about how they go about their process, and they kind of loosely set their board before the Combine off of the film and all of the contact they've had with players throughout the season to this point. And not just the seniors, but the juniors as well. They've had scouts in their facilities. They've had a lot of exposure to what they do on the field in terms of the film, and now they get to change gears a little bit. We're going to hear from both Andy Reid and Brett Veach this week. Already heard from Reid, and we'll talk about Eric Berry and some of his comments here in another video. But for right now, let's talk about how the process goes. Everybody gets into town, they go eat at St. Elmo's, and they get down to business. And as the players come in, they have to go through medical checks, all kinds of stuff to make sure that they follow up on not just injuries from college, but even those from football. Notably, Nick Bosa had a slight ACL in high school that they're still talking about checking. So it's very detailed, and it's all the way through so that the NFL teams understand physically what they're getting in a prospect. Then they go through all these tests, meetings, getting to know people, personality type things, so you get a feel for the player. It's really hard to do in 15 minutes. But this is where the stories come from, with all of the teams asking strange questions, trying to get a feel for what a player is like as a person. Then the on-field work starts, and that's really where it gets down to all the testing. And what we'll do with Rogue Analytics is I'll have the draft guide out a couple of weeks before the draft. It'll be all about the measurements and my custom matrices about how you combine all those metrics, about different functional movement. All that comes from the testing, the results, the numbers that come out of the Combine, as well as pro days for players who weren't invited to the Combine. Some of the younger guys, some of the small school guys, they'll all be in that situation as well. And I'll go over what all the Rogue Analytics metrics are in another video down the line. But let's talk about some prospects. Now, when it comes to prospects, I'm going to focus today on the defensive side of the ball because to me, that's clearly the priority. And if you've heard me on the podcast on Locked On Chiefs, as well as on my Twitter feed at Ryan Tracy NFL, check that out as well. Man, I am focused on this defense. If a very skilled or exceptional offensive player falls, okay, I can see doing that. But the focus has to be on the defensive personnel because they just have too many holes. We don't know what the situation is with either Ford and Houston. Can they play as a tandem, or are they going to keep them both? That's a big question mark. Clearly, they're going to lose Steven Nelson. They're only going to have Fuller and Ward as viable players in what you need at least 4 corners on a team. So there's big holes there. And the free agent field for that, I think, is going to be pretty limiting. So it's got to be looking at this draft class in terms of trying to get some elite talent at the corner position. Now, safeties as well are going to be important. That hinges a lot on what happens with Eric Berry, and I know that there's some back and forth about that, but they still have to be taken a look at, even if Berry remains on the team, and even if they go after free agents. It still is a viable option, and at this point in the process, when we don't know those answers, we're going to talk about the safeties as well. Now, at the top of the draft, you're going to see Nick Bosa go, and that's pretty much heartfelt across the board by every analyst I can even track, both amateur and professional. So that's going to be pretty much a done deal. There's some significant injury concerns with him, though, and you've seen the family trait for injuries as well. So I don't know that it'll be number 1 necessarily, but he's going to be a top 5 pick. Beyond that, I think it gets a little bit questionable. And I think what we have to remember is that what we've seen lately is that the speed rusher type has not been the guy that's been at the top of the list the last few years. As we look back, Bradley Chubb and Myles Garrett were both guys that played not as with elite speed explosion, but with power, with a well-rounded game, with hand technique, a lot of things that are important. And I think technique-wise, Bosa is clearly at the top of the game. A lot of folks feel that Josh Allen is a top 5 pick. I personally don't. I talked about that a little bit on Twitter, and I'll probably do another video separate on Josh Allen as well. But needless to say, he's a great speed rusher. And I really like what he brings in that aspect. I think he's even quicker than D Ford may have been in college. He also plays coverage very, very well. And if you're especially trying to get kind of a hybrid thing where you could play him as a Sam sometimes, where he could play in some coverage, because he did play a lot of coverage snaps. I think that's a viable option. And then you can work a package where you might have 3 of what used to be edge rushers or defensive ends that you can rush all the time. I think that's a really interesting concept, particularly with Josh Allen. I don't think I would select him in the top 15, but most everyone else, in fact, almost everybody else, feels that he will definitely go there. So if that happens, then it's a moot point anyway. Then you drop down into some of the other guys, and that's when the speed rushers start to take the focus, I think, in terms of most of the rankings of the analysts that I trust and from what I've seen on film. And some of those include Jachai Polite from Florida, who is still a little bit bigger. I think he weighs in about 255 pounds, 6'3", I think, but can rush the end with speed. And that's really great, because what we've seen the last 2 seasons from Tom Brady and the Patriots, especially for the Chiefs, is that Brady getting the ball out fast has been critical for them. And so if you're even going to have a hope, you have to get pressure up the middle, but you have to get it from the ends too. And that's why I think the shift towards the speed rusher is something the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo are going to be very interested in, because Justin Houston, even if he is retained, he's more of a power rusher. He doesn't have that bursty first step like he used to. Even then, it was not up to speed with, say, D Ford or a couple of these guys. So I think Polite is a guy that, even though he's a little bit bigger, he's still got the speed to do it. And especially if you see some of that nickel formation the Chiefs ran late in the season, he's going to be away from the tackles enough that I think his speed is going to be an asset. Same thing with Brian Burns, although he's a lot smaller, maybe 30 pounds smaller, and I think that's a bit too small, but the Chiefs may have to take a good look at him. I don't know that 29 is a viable spot for him, but you never know. And then there's the strange case of Montez Sweat, who I think was really, really high earlier in the season. He's fallen some. I think he's starting to rebound a little bit in these rankings. And here's the thing. None of the teams are moving guys around the board. Even after the combine, you might see them move within a tier, but nobody's jumping rounds. That's not the way these teams work. They've set their board off of the film, and they'll make minor adjustments based on everything else, including the combine metrics. So I still feel like Sweat is a first-round candidate. I don't think that ever wasn't the case, and I don't think the teams are moving them anywhere. Will he be there at 29? I doubt it, but it's still an option, especially if the Chiefs are willing, which I think they may have to be. If they want an impact defensive player, they're going to have to move up. They have that second-round pick that's extra. They have some other picks that they can afford to part with. I think that's going to be a necessity if they want to get somebody that's an impact player. And all of these guys have to be speed-based. So these combine numbers are going to be important so that we understand who's who, where's where, and can they get to the quarterback quickly. But they don't necessarily have to be an edge rusher. The other big position that I think the Chiefs have to go for, and I think honestly it's the highest priority, and we'll see what the times are coming out of here, is the cornerback group. There's a lot of back and forth about Greedy Williams being more of a man guy, Byron Murphy being more of a zone guy. There are a couple of analysts that have those switched. I haven't done the CB film yet, but Deandre Baker is another one that's going to be in there at the end. Awarie, Mullen, those are options there as well. And I think what's going to be key is all these guys have to be good athletes. They don't necessarily have to be burners. Like, nobody's going to keep up with Tyreek Hill. I don't think that's the expectation. They have to have great change of direction skills, and they have to have long speed. It's got to be a whole package. Because whenever you're spending a first-round pick, even as low in the first round as 29 with the Chiefs, it has to be an impact player that can step on the field and play from day one, especially if they move up to get him. So if you do see a trade, expect it's somebody that they feel is the athlete that can get on the field right away and play with Javarius Ward and Kendall Fuller and be that spot within those 3. Now, they might even go another one, and there's some options farther down in the draft that I think are going to be interesting. But this combine, watch those guys. Those 4 in particular are going to have a lot to prove, because I think they're the 4 that are in contention for first-round picks. One of them probably being from the Chiefs. So pay attention. Let me know what you think. The last group I will say is there's really only two, and I'm very focused on the safety group being a free safety. Especially if Eric Berry's back, I think you have him covered of what you want him to do. You need somebody in the back to be a field general. And there's a lot of free agency questions around the free safety kind of position for the Chiefs. We don't know anything about it, but you got to scout them anyway. And you got to know that they can cover a lot of ground as a single high free safety. And the two that stand out are going to be Deionte Thompson and Nasir Adderley. And I think both of them are decent options. They're different in different ways. But their times in particular, change direction and long speed at this combine this weekend are going to be important. So if you're only going to watch maybe 10 prospects, those are the guys that I think you should be paying attention to. I'm definitely going to. I'll have reports and I'll have all the analytics on them after the combine. Let me know who you're looking forward to seeing. Leave your comments below. If you're new here, hit the subscription and the notification bell so you know when a new video goes up. I appreciate all your time. Thanks for all you guys that hang out here. I'll talk to you in the comments, and I'll see you next time.